Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Strategic Frontlines, the Clause YouTube channel. Today, I have with me Lieutenant General VP Singh, AVSM YSM retired. General Singh specializes on national security and strategic affairs. Please also welcome Maj Gen RPS Bhadauria, VSM retired. He is the Additional Director General of Clause, and he specializes in counterterrorism, in scenario building, and gaming exercises. I welcome both of you to this podcast. Today, we will discuss whether our foreign policy needs a recalibration or not. With evolving global dynamics, the diplomatic challenges have increased. The global environment, it has shifted to a more multipolar world, but with hues of bipolarity still visible, with often two blocs, one the American-led West and the second Russia and China along with its allies, very prominent. Apart from that, there is also the rise of emerging economies, and the policies of Trump have created instability. So the relationship now we find are becoming more and more transactional and short-term. So as far as India's foreign policy is concerned, there are two very prominent views which are coming up. The first one is India's foreign policy has evolved, and India has navigated this complex world with strategic autonomy, enhanced global position, strengthened strategic partnership, and actively shaped global discussion. India is one of the few countries which is a member of Quad as well as SCO and BRICS. On the other hand, the discussions also revolve around three or more factors, which are firstly, is India's foreign policy more reactive than being proactive? Secondly, the balancing which we do may not give us that dividend which is required, as often ambiguity in strategic alignments creates a perception of fence-sitter. Thirdly, there is a view that post-Op Sindoor, we may not have garnered enough support. So my first question is to General Singh. General Singh, do you believe that India's foreign policy needs to be recalibrated or rebooted? And what is your first general impression, your views?
Firstly, thank you so much, Dr. Roshan, for getting me on the show. Let me begin by saying that foreign policy of India, or for that matter, any nation, it's a dynamic entity. It's a dynamic process. And therefore, that reshaping, recalibration, reimagining, it's an ongoing process. And for India also, it is true. Now, before I go any further, let me just recapitulate certain fundamentals about the India's foreign policy. Because once we are clear on that, it will be easy for us to explain as to where our foreign policy is going and the other questions that you have raised, whether we are reactive or fence-sitter or this, that. Okay. So to my mind, it is applicable to all the countries, not just India. So national interests and aspirations, now I'm talking about India, it's our number one factor. It is number one fundamental factor that our national interests and India's aspirations have to be addressed, accommodated, and focused throughout. That marks the basic direction of our foreign policy. With the passage of time and the change in our CNP, our role, our shape, makes that thing absolutely important and necessary. The other part is multipolarity. It is well known that India is now championing the cause of multipolarity. Now, let me just go back a little bit into history about this aspect. Right from our birth, actually, multipolarity takes its root from the good old NAM, non-aligned movement. When India was not very powerful, when India was not so influential, and world was divided into two blocks, then only, even then, we started with the thought of not joining a bloc but remaining non-aligned. And not just us, we were the founding member of non-aligned movement. There were so many countries which were part of us, and it in itself, it created a bloc as opposed to eastern and western bloc that the world was aware of. Of course, those were the time when Asia was a dark, semi-dark continent just emerging from the colonial past. But we held on to that. And I think it is the progression of that. Now we are talking in terms of multipolarity. Connected with this concept of multipolarity is the term that we often use for India's foreign policy is India exercising strategic autonomy. To my mind, it is an instrument to attain the goal of multipolarity. It is believed that India is now in a position where it need not join any particular bloc or power. It has the capacity, capability, and prestige, or rather, I would say the status to be a pole in itself. So that is how it connects well with the idea of multipolarity and strategic autonomy. As a fundamental of our foreign policy, we have always been the follower of rule of law. We always believed that rule of law must prevail under all circumstances with to every country, all 192 countries, rich, poor, big, small, anyone. And that takes us to our aspirations of keeping a harmonious regional and global environment and aspire to keep our periphery also quiet and harmonious. Next in line will be our thought of non-expansionist and non-revisionist power. It is our history, it is our cultural, as a cultural state, it is proven fact that India is a non-expansionist and non-revisionist power. And therefore, it sits well with our foreign policy to pursue the goal of strategic independence or autonomy. Of course, India as a nation has always been and still is supportive of positive changes. That includes the role of global institutions, that includes role of the world order, whichever way it is. But so long as it is positive in their content and direction, we are always for it. Now, before I finish this part, let me also state a point regarding clarity in our foreign policy. You use the word in your introduction, fence sitter. There is another term which is used often for India is that our foreign policy is nothing but a glorious ambivalence. Kind of a glorious ambiguity. To some extent, it is right. We actually, as a country, we thrived in glorious ambivalent environment because it gave us multiple options. It gave us time and space to exercise the right choice in our national interest. However, of late, from that ambivalence environment, we are moving slightly to clarity. And I'll give you two examples of that. In our relations with China, which will come later, I'm sure, we have this problem about this post Galwan. A lot of discussions and all have taken place. But we made it very clear that India, in its foreign policy direction, is pursuing the goal of 3Ds. That is asking China to disengage, de-escalate, and de-induct in those stages. Unless all 3Ds are completed, our foreign minister is on, external affairs minister is on record to say that our relations with China are not normal. But having said that, we are also following the policy of approaching China to ensure that the status at the border or the peripheries remain quiet and there is a progression taking place. It's a new normal with China. With Pakistan, of course, it goes without saying, I need not repeat, everybody knows. So there our foreign policy is very clear. Why I wanted to highlight these with these two examples, that from the fundamentals to our thriving in the environments of ambivalence to gaining clarity. This is how our foreign policy is progressing. We'll come and talk some other things later. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to bring in General Bhadauria. As General Singh pointed out, that national interest was paramount, and rightfully so. For any country, having partnership with varied countries is akin to their objective. So it is nothing wrong in it. So do you also feel that we have successfully navigated the challenges, or do you think we need to recalibrate somewhere? General Bhadauria, you need to unmute your mic. Yeah.
Firstly, thank you so much, ma'am, for inviting me to this podcast. Your topic of today's podcast is actually very interesting: fatigue and rebooting the foreign policy. Now, these convey a lot of things, and I agree with General VP Singh that the foreign policies are dynamic, but there is also in every country, if you notice, there is tremendous. The foreign policies do not change with season, right? Rarely in stable countries and which are progressing and which are aspiring to be some kind of powers, the foreign policies do not change dramatically, right? There is a lot of continuity even from one administration to the other, whether it is US, whether it is India, or whether it is Europe, anywhere else. It only changes where there are autocrats. So one goes and other comes and he brings in some different kind of policy. So all these foreign policies are shaped in whichever country by a few factors. Now, what are these factors? Firstly, the internal factors. Firstly is the geography. So our India's foreign policy is shaped by the geography, meaning we are a peninsular country. All our trade takes place through the maritime route. So therefore, maritime security is very important to us. So therefore, all our foreign policy goals would be to enhance this maritime security. That is why Prime Minister Modi's call for Saga in Shangri-La dialogue in 2018 or so, right? Then other is economy, right? We are a growing economy. We are fourth largest and we want to further grow and bring prosperity to our people. So whatever we do, our foreign policy goal always would be to enhance our economic development, right? So therefore trade. So therefore the kind of relationships that we have would be reflected in this aspect. So therefore we are having trade with EU. We just signed a FTA with Great Britain. We're going to sign one with even EU. We are in negotiations with US to sign a trade deal. That is all dictated by your desire to grow faster. Then, of course, the political structures. We are a democratic country, so obviously, most of our engagements would be with democratic countries. We will find it very difficult to deal with autocratic countries. So, therefore, we are finding it difficult to deal with Pakistan because in Pakistan, the real power lies with somebody who's not democratically elected, who is a military dictator. So we find it difficult to deal with it. We do not have talks with Pakistan because we know there is no point in having talks with the political leadership, which is actually of not much relevance. Then is the leadership. Leadership has profound impact on your foreign policy. There are some leaders who are weak, some leaders are strong, but whatever be the case, the institutions of that country dictate what kind of foreign policy would be there. So leaders also have only very small margin of changing the foreign policy. We cannot say today we have a very strong leader or very decisive leader or whatever, so our foreign policy has changed. No, there will be only a bit of tinkering here and there. The next aspect, which is very important, is the public opinion. Right? India is a young country. So what is the sentiment in our country? That we want to grow. We are an aspirational power. So everything, this is reflected in our foreign policy. If you are aspiration power, obviously you would like to grow. Obviously, you got a huge population. They have to be given jobs. So therefore, when you have trade deals, you will see that in services sector, sending our people is our one of the foreign policy goals. So therefore, when you sign deals, like we are sending people almost 1 lakh to Taiwan, we are sending people to Israel, right? The one which we have just signed with Europe, there is, sorry, UK, there is a provision where our trained power will go there for 3 years and they would not be putting some kind of taxes and things like that. So those are our foreign policy goals. Now, there are some external factors, and you rightly highlighted right in the beginning that today's world is interconnected and interdependent. So, the dynamism comes from this aspect because we are interconnected and we are interdependent. So, therefore, whatever happens in some part of the region, part of the world, or in a country impacts others, like the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war is taking place in Europe, but their effects are being felt in say global south. So therefore global south would also be managing or looking to reset, not reset fully, but a bit of bring in dynamism in their outlook. Now, before I conclude, what I wish to highlight is there was a defining movement when India's foreign policy actually took a very different turn, or it started looking very differently. And what was that period? That period was 89 to 91. And what happened during this time? A couple of things very important and profound which took place. First was from 89 onwards, Pakistan started the insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir. Before this, we remember there was brass tacks. Ziaul Haq had come to watch a cricket match, and Rajiv Gandhi was there. So that diplomacy was there. That was the time when he conveyed to India that, look, we have now developed nuclear capability. So that was a signal to India not to do anything. Otherwise, there were a lot of talk that brass tacks may get converted into some kind of a venture from our side. But that was it. And under that nuclear umbrella, then Pakistan started their proxy war. So that was one huge challenge in front of the government of that time. The second one was collapse of Soviet Russia. With that, the bipolar world became unipolar world. We were dependent on Soviet Russia for weapons, for everything, including the diplomatic cover. So therefore, the prime minister of that time had to really reset the old foreign policy, because now with that cover was gone, Russia, nobody knew what kind of a power it will become, and we had to align our complete foreign policy with the US. So that was a major shift which took place. Then during the same time, India collapsed economically. We did not even have $1 billion reserves left. And then we had to borrow, uh, put our gold in UK banks and borrow money and things like that. And that is the history. So that period was very, very important period where there were fundamental shift in our foreign policy. And the all credit must go to Prime Minister Narasimha Rao for navigating the country in those difficult times very, very well. So, what are the changes which took place? So, first was, like I said, our pivot towards US took place. We did our nuclear blast in 98, and within a year or two, the president of US was in India. President Clinton was in India. So that was the kind of resetting which we had done. Also, if you recollect, from 93 to 95, 97, a lot of protocols were signed with China for managing the LAC, because that was a concern to us. So starting from 93, when we signed peace and tranquility agreement with China in 95 or 97, and this thing. So on the border, we brought in peace. During the same time, we started with the look east policy. Why look east policy? Because now our markets, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao realized, have to be towards east. Southeast Asia, which was growing at a fantastic rate of 8 9%. We remember those Asian tigers, they were all towards east. So our we had to look east. So our look east policy came into being, right? Right up to Japan and things like that. Then we continued our engagement with Russia. And now let me see how the continuity in the foreign policy took place. With these 4 5 fundamental shifts, I said, the Congress government, of course, was in power. After that, for a brief period, United Democratic Front government came when we had 2 3 prime ministers. The NDA won, Prime Minister Bajpayee, then UPA 1 and 2, and NDA 2. If you see the this 25-30 year period, there has been absolute continuity. Our relations with US have just been growing, right? We signed the nuclear deal in during the times of Mr. Manmohan Singh, and we signed those 4 very defining defense agreement, and also the Quad came during the time of NDA, right? So see the continuity that is taking place, and we are aiming for $500 billion worth of trade with US, with Europe. Our engagements have increased with France. We are buying submarines, we are buying aircrafts. We have signed a deal with UK FTA. Russia, we are continuing in spite of a lot of pressures from US not to buy oil and buy armaments to distance from Russia. India has withstood. So that is where our strategic autonomy was seen. So we are still buying oil from Russia because we are still buying weapons from Russia because that is in our national interest. China, right? So we were always wanting to manage China. We knew that China will be a competitor. Why? Because China believes in a unipolar Asia. That is their fundamental goal, right? Their psyche is of a middle power that we understand. We understand the Chinese. Because of that, we know that when India grows, it will not be seen in the same light as China would see other countries. And obviously, India cannot play a second fiddle in times to come. So, therefore, with China, the kind of foreign policy that we have to see is different. Prime Minister Modi had almost 15, 16 meetings before Doklam took place, because we were just wanting to manage our environment, manage our relationship with China. That did not mean that we were having our eyes closed. We did not know what kind of a power China would be in times to come, right? But after Galwan, of course, we realized that we have to have a different kind of engagement. So I'll stop here. If you in the next this thing, I would say, as we stand here, where are we in the foreign policy? To my mind, we have actually continued for last 25, 30 years, barring a few changes here and there, which have to be dynamic. But there's not been any great shift in our foreign. So I'll stop here now.
General Singh, I would like to bring you in here. General Bhadauria talked about the continuity in foreign policy. Now, do you feel that strong personalities have the power to change the direction of the foreign policy? And now, here, I would like to discuss India's relationship with the US. This is the most talked about relationship, especially after President Trump came into power. Now, there are clear signals under President Trump that Pakistan is coming back to its radar. Not only we can talk about the initial visits and lunch diplomacy and other things, but recently also, if you see that Pakistan organized the conference of Chief of Defense Staff from Central Asian countries, where Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, they participated. And most importantly, General Kurilla, who is the central commander of CENTCOM, attended it. And its focus was counterterrorism, along with, of course, cyber and other issues. So my 2 questions to you are, what do you make of this? Is there a larger American game plan in Central Asia to checkmate the Chinese or the Russians? And secondly, do you feel that the sheen from the Indo-American bonhomie has little bit, it's fading? Because even if we talk, I think today Trump also stated that he's going to put 25% tariff. So what are your comments on these 2 questions?
Thank you. So before I answer your question, of course, I want to make 2 points with reference to what General Bhadauria had mentioned. He used the term like foreign policy is not something like which changes with season. So we need to understand what are those causative factors which influences the foreign policies or induces change in the foreign policy. I would like to spend about 2 minutes or so on that. The second point he mentioned about India is not comfortable dealing with autocrats. Now, there my point is, well, we have been dealing with Saudi Arabia, monarchs, UAE, monarch, Myanmar, autocrats, China, number one, autocrat. So, to my mind, when you are dealing with states, it doesn't matter who is ruling the state, so long as the person who is you are dealing with has the power in his hand, you have to deal with him. Now, whether you are comfortable or not is not again important. What is important is whether you are serving the cause of your national interests. So long as that is being served, to my mind, it doesn't matter who are you dealing with. That's number one point. As Deng Xiaoping had said, it doesn't matter whether the cat is red or black or white or black, so long as it is catching mice. Same way, so long as the national interest of your countries are being served, it hardly matters that who are you are dealing with. And of course, we dealt with all sorts of rulers. That is one point. Second, about this continuation in foreign policy. You only have asked me this question right now. That do we now need to review of our foreign policy with US? Obviously, we need to. And what is happening? It is actually proving the same point, that had our foreign policy been a static, continuously flowing river, perhaps this question wouldn't have arisen. But I'll come to a little later. As I said, let me just spend 2 minutes on understanding the causative factors which propelled India to make certain changes in its foreign policy direction, make certain adjustments, and accommodate. All three factors very important. Let me flag some points. One of them is global power shift. What we are witnessing today was something like before the collapse of Soviet Union, what General Bhadauria had mentioned, it was a bipolar world. And in that bipolar world, all other countries were experiencing that pull and push. Today, we are going through the similar or near similar transformation. Sometimes you think it's a unipolar world, America rules supreme. Sometimes you feel there is a serious challenges to American hegemony by China. Sometimes you feel European Union, after having been divorced by Donald Trump, is coming out from under the shadow of US and becoming another powerful bloc. So this global power shift which is taking place at the moment is actually telling us to do the necessary readjustments, and we are doing it. Second is our own rise. What about our rise? We are number one populous country in the world. We are the fourth largest economy, going to be third, second in times to come. So what happens to our aspirations? And when we meet those aspirations, obviously our foreign policy has to adjust to our stature, to our influence, and to our reach. That's another causative factor. What about the political thoughts which are shaping the world? Gone are the days when America was supposed to be the flag bearer of democracy. Today, American president is saying with thumping their chest, say that America first, make America great again, looking inward. Same is the case with European Union, same is the case with China, rejuvenation of Chinese people. So these kind of factors, political thoughts, when they are shaping the foreign policy of other countries, the impact is coming on to a country like India. There are so many nationalistic government. So we have to adjust. Foreign policy is definitely going to make an amendment. That is the reason why it is going to change, can't remain constant. Then what about the decay of global institutions? Well, there was a time when UNO was supposed to be the custodian of peace and tranquility around the globe. It's no more an institution worth calling its name. Powerless, toothless. So are the institutions like WTO, WHO. So if none of those institutions are functioning and only the power game is on, what happens to your foreign policy? Adjustment is needed. Redirection is required. Then comes another factor. Right now, what is happening in between Israel and Gaza in Gaza? It's a non-state actors which are challenging the state. Alongside, there are religious political thoughts which are challenging the nation state of the world, around the world. Now, those are absolutely new developments. When those developments are taking place, foreign policies of various countries is going to take the hit, and they have to adjust it. So whether you are dealing with the religious clergy in Iran, or you are dealing with the autocrat or despot like North Korea, or you are dealing with non-state actors in Gaza or in Afghanistan, wherever they are, foreign policy has to change. And you have to deal with them. That's another point. Then about the power differential. And connect it with the decay of the global institution. Today, for the last, after post-collapse of Soviet Union, and before the China actually started emerging on the global scene, might is right. Never heard the term like collation of willing. So those kind of terms were coined, mirroring only one thing, that it is the might which is the right in this world. And when that happens, once again, national foreign policies have to make adjustments. Then about the ultra-nationalistic, it's taking place all around the world. Similarly, the racial outlook, cries are there, go back to your countries and all those kind of things. So such like developments, when they are taking place around the world, nations have to address that. They have to make amends to their foreign policy. That is why I listed that fundamentals of Indian foreign policy, and now listed out the causative factor. Now you raised the question about United States and India. Well, fundamentally, we are two democratic states. It has been said more than once that India and United States are natural alliances, natural partners. At the same time, we are witnessing that America is pressurizing India to come under its umbrella. It is not going to happen. So we are experiencing pressure from the number one democratic country of the world. The oldest democracy, it is putting pressure on the largest democracy to be an alliance partner. So what about the interplay between these two democratic states? Of course, there are major strategic and geopolitical significance, like we all know. Let me just flag some of them. Counterbalance to China. General Bhadauria had mentioned that we do not want China's hegemony in Asia. It cannot be a unipolar continent under China. Do we have the capacity to challenge China? Of course, we have the aspiration to do that. That's why the multipolarity concept. How are we going to do it? Can we do it all by ourselves? Answer is no. So that is where comes United States. So we are finding a different terms rather than making it sound so aggressive that counterbalancing China, but we are making it difficult for China to become the sole governing power in the region. We have, in pursuance of this goal, signed a number of defense and security agreement with United States of America. You have this BICA, COMCASA, and that's ISET, so many of them. What does it show? It is showing China, it is messaging China. It is also empowering India. And when we do that, I again bring you back to the thing. Are we going to go under US umbrella? That is where the ambivalence of Indian foreign policy comes in play. No, we will not. So we have to walk the tightrope. Then we have a huge economic and trade potential. Right now, as we speak, there is a process underway, decoupling, de-risking trade and those relationship with China. So when that is going to take place, our economic and trade reorientation will also take place. Similarly, in the field of technology and innovation collaboration, massive collaboration is going on with United States of America. And to top the list, when it comes to US-India relationship, it is the influence of our diaspora, people-to-people contact. United States is number one country And I was reading somewhere, perhaps Indians are number one H1B visa holders in United States. So that is our natural inclination towards United States. That's the convergence. And we are just reading in the newspaper, latest in the list is Shailesh Jejurkar, who has just been appointed as the CEO of Procter and Gamble. So the list is endless. So this is the diaspora which is creating that convergence and influencing the policy of India towards United States. Now, of course, it is not without its challenges. Managing differences with Russia is the most significant challenge today we are facing vis-a-vis our relationship with USA and our legacy relationship with Russia. USA has made it absolutely clear that she is not liking India not condemning Russia in Ukraine war or not supporting effort in Ukraine war. We have to walk that challenge. Trade and intellectual property frictions are there. Human right, off and on you keep hearing from the United States and various institutions, India's democratic right, human right credentials. We are not going to tolerate that, but it's a kind of a thorn in our relationship. That's a challenge. Then, of course, a lot of issues related to data sovereignty and all that. We'll not go into those details. And before I close, India's desire to be a voice of global South is not being liked by United States. Her position is very clear. If you have the capacity to be a voice of global South, be my guest. But once again, be under my umbrella. So those are the conflict areas. So as far as our relationship with United States is concerned, I would rate it very high on positive, but not free from its challenges. Imagine yesterday, Lok Sabha debate was, major point was, did Trump got the ceasefire done or was it somebody else? And our leadership was at pain to explain to the parliament and to the country, no, we are not. What does it show? It shows that whether we accept it or not, there is a perception that India is being put under a lot of pressure by that country. So this is sum total of our relationship with the United States. Sorry for being answer. Thank you.
General Bhadauria, I would like to get you in. First, I'll take your views on US. Do you feel that US is trying to recalibrate its foreign policy as far as South Asia and Central Asia is concerned? First, and do you think an India-US relations are going strong? There may be little hiccups here and there, but ultimately it will take its own course and go in a positive way. First is this. And secondly, I would also like to ask you about Russia, since General Singh also talked about Russia. We know that today's world, everybody looks after their interests first. So the Russia-India relationship has also undergone some changes. But do you think it is the interest of both the countries to cement their relationship further? And the historic connect which we have should be strengthened. And it would be a nice, this thing, what you call it, if President Putin visits, because his visit is due for quite some time. So I would also like to ask you this also. And since we have defense collaboration with Russia, and BrahMos is very popular, and many nations, they want to buy that. So do you think that we can link foreign policy to defense policy? I would like you to answer all these three questions.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Firstly, regarding the United States, let me quote two presidents of United States from two different parties. The Republican president, that is President Bush in 2004 or 5, when this nuclear deal was being signed, he said, we want to build India's capabilities, military capabilities, so that in Indian Ocean region, they can look after the or have the maritime security. That was in 2004-5. Joe Biden, when he became president, he said Indo-US relationship would be the most defining relationship of 21st century. So one was a Republican, other was a Democrat. And we understand that in democracy, the parties have a particular line and the the head of the government or head of the party has to abide by that, because that party line is what actually the leadership takes forward. So it cannot be that Trump has some other uh, f- um, uh, uh, policy and Republicans have some different policy. It doesn't happen. In India, Modi cannot be different from what BJP's policy is. So therefore, we should not give too much of weightage to Trump's tweets or his manner of conducting the foreign policy. That we should not. We should see the underlying strengths or weaknesses, right? Now, going forward, say another 5, 7, 10 years, there will be three largest economies. Number one would be US, number two would be China, and number three would be India, right? And as far as US being, uh, you know, upstaged by China from their position of number one power, I think there's a lot of time left. If you just see the military budget of this year, right? The military budget of US is something like 850 to 900 billion dollars, which is more than 10 other countries put together, which also includes China. So let's look at the military power which United States has. With such huge military power, you mean to say United States would be upstaged by China? I do not think so. At least not in short and medium term. What happens in future, 10, 15 years after that, I really don't know. Right? And evidence was Iran war when Israel attacked Iran and US bombed Iran. Look at the two countries, which were the most, what should I say, the people were talking about all kinds of axis of evil and things like that. So South North Korea, Russia, China, Iran, all of them being together. Look, what was the reaction from China? Practically nothing. They did not come to the rescue of Iran. So you mean to say the countries are not watching? They know that when something happens, China is not going to come forward in the manner in which US has been coming forward. So China has to display that kind of a partnership. Look at the way they do the economic cooperation. They're not. They're giving loans at a very high percent to even their most what should I say? Pakistan is their most intimate partner. They call it as Hajj and Himalayas and things like that. But even then, Pakistan is running into debt trap. So when Munir went a few days back, he had gone to reset the loan repayment. So that is the kind of relationship that China is having. So you mean to say China is going to be replacing US's one power? A lot of time is. I do not think so. So therefore, it is in India's interest that we continue to have a relationship with US. Uh, China is not going to give us technology. China is not going to give us weapons. So therefore, whom do we rely on? It is US, of course, right? As far as the Russia is concerned, Russia has been a very, very stable partner. This particular relationship has, right from the beginning, has been very, very stable. I do not think there has been any time when there have been challenges to this partnership. Even now, when China is having no limits partners with Russia, Russia is a very dependent partner. Right? They gave us S-400. There are talks that probably we may be co-producing or co-manufacturing S-500. When Defense Minister had gone to Russia, I think a year back, we were in talks for buying radars. And what are those radars? They're AD radars, top of the line, which would give our borders security. So that is the kind of relationship which we have with Russia. We sold our BrahMos missiles to Philippines. Philippines is going to fight against China. They're going to use these BrahMos against China. And BrahMos are a collaborative effort between Russia and India. Russia did not object to it. See the deep understanding beneath the surface both of us have. Putin is going to be coming in December. Prime Minister Modi would host. We understand there are sanctions on Putin, but still India would go forward and host. So this relationship would continue because it is not for nothing that Russia is looking at India. See the map of the Eurasia. You find Russia is on one side of China, and India has a huge border with China to the south, right? So obviously, you want to have friends with people who are bordering China. China is a huge country, right? So Russia is, um, they have their problems with them. They had their problems with them in the past. So what happens in future, nobody knows. Thank you, ma'am. I'll stop here.
Uh, General Singh, before I take a few questions, I would like to take the last section, that is our neighborhood. That is very important. So, I would like to ask you that it is felt that India's foreign policy, do we need to change as far as our neighborhood is concerned? Because we started with the right slogan of neighborhood first, but somehow down the line, it got overshadowed by other things. So, especially if we see the case of Bangladesh, where the relationship has deteriorated. So, according to you, what needs to be done?
Okay. Once again, it's always good to tie back to the previous speaker, my good friend General Bhadauria. So what happens is, like, he gave two quotes from the former presidents of United States, and the quote was, if I paraphrase it, that we will build India to manage China. Now the first word is very important. When we do that, that is USA does that, are there any free lunches? Answer is no. So when they do that, we have to read between the lines, then what do we have to do in return? When we manage China, and on you can say at the with the cooperation of United States of America, what is the price that India has to pay at that time? That question remained unanswered. Now, yes, when we deal, and this is one part, so long as this stress or this tension or this competition is going on in all other fields except the hard war, it's okay. War, some issues here, there, and all that. So long as it is that, it's fine. But if push come to shove, and then we start talking in terms of hard war, hard option, then we must remember that it is our backyard which is going to go up in flames, not America's. America has always fought their war not on their mainland, far, far away. So we need to be very, very careful in understanding the noble gesture from the United States of America in building up India to counter China. We should, and we have been playing very smart on that, and we must continue to do that, which is the domain of foreign policy. And that actually brings me back to the same point, that foreign policies of the state needs constant calibration and recalibration. It's not static. So when US does that to us, we must read between the lines and take appropriate measures. Balance China out. At the same time, remember that it is our geography which is going to get affected, not just our geography up in Himalayas, on our western border as well. So we don't want our landscape to go up in flame in managing China at the behest of USA, just a limited point. I entirely 100% agree with General Bhadauria when he mentioned about Russia. It was a very valid point that traditionally, historically, Russia and China could never see eye to eye. Right now, because of the prevailing geopolitical situation, Russia has become an iron brother, but it is only a matter of time. And go back to the Chanakya's theory, neighbor's neighbor. Moment you come to the neighbor's neighbor, you know that Russia and India have a more in common, even as China as a, because Russia as a erstwhile superpower doesn't like to be treated as junior partner to any country. Forget about China. They were never treated as junior partner to USA when USA was number one power and unipolar world, a bipolar world. So those are the factors which we must keep in mind to ensure that China is balanced with the strength and cooperation from the USA, and our relations with Russia remain on an even keel in progressive mode for a world in say 2050, when India, as Jan Bhadauria mentioned, will be number 3 big economic power. So it will be a different globe, but our relations with Russia must remain steady, strong. And remember, I mean, just for the audience and for everybody, the only country, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, with which we have a security pact is Russia, which was signed in during 1971 war, Bangladesh war. So that is the only strategic defense security partnership we have in black and white. That speaks a lot about India-Russia relationship, and I 100% agree with General Bhadauria. So coming now to our neighborhood. Well, here I would say pull back my thought in the sense that all our policies, look east, act east, neighborhood first, are very well-founded policies, sterling policies. What we need to do is we need to walk the talk. It's very important. That's number one point. Second point I want to mention is India must resist the temptation of becoming big brother in Asia, in its neighborhood. Actually, that tag of big brother doesn't suit us. In one of my earlier podcasts with you, I have mentioned that India has culturally been a gentle giant, a benign big power, whose intellectual and philosophic influence actually casts that spell on its neighborhood. Historically, it has been done that way. And we will do very well to remain in that caste. Spread your influence, help your neighbors, harmonize your periphery. And it is absolutely tied up with your overall security. So our policies are well founded, well directed. We need to walk the talk. Now there is a problem. The problem comes, we are pitted against another neighbor, that is China, which is using a different currency, which is actually using a hard currency. Lots and lots of money. When it throws that money, and now again going back to the first point that we discussed, when you are in a world where there are autocratic leaders, take Myanmar, take Maldives, take Nepal, or that half-baked, the small countries, short of money, it becomes very difficult for these states to resist the temptation of getting money from China. People are learning. I hope they are learning fast. What Sri Lanka has learned in a hard way, the debt trap of China. So long as they understand India has a window over there. When we help Afghanistan, we don't go around helping rulers of Afghanistan. We help Afghanistan by building their infrastructure. With our limited capacity, we help Sri Lanka in the dire need of that country with very limited capacity that we have. So here the smartness rests in, with our limited resources that we have at our disposal, we need to use them judiciously to keep our periphery calm, to help our neighbors, and to further our foreign policy goals. And I think we do very well in that. Just imagine about 6 or 8 months back, Maldives was, the newspapers and the electronic media was going agog. Then Maldives has done this and they have gone to China, this happened, that happened. What happened day before yesterday when Prime Minister Modi was there? So diplomacy is a long-term game. It takes time. And there again, I go back and agree with General Bhadauria when he says these are the policies which are founded and thought about by the states. Prime ministers may come and prime ministers may go. Leaders may come and leaders may go. But policies remain. And I'll end up by saying that our policies are very fine. We need to walk the talk, use our resources judiciously, resist the temptation of becoming a big brother. That's a bad tag if we get attached with that. And last point before I close about Bangladesh. Actually, we need not worry so much. In the 75 years history, if 8 months are like that, let an elected government come in Bangladesh. Realization will set in that they cannot do without India. Our interdependence has grown to that extent. And the realization is also something what I just mentioned a minute back, that what if you take China in your country, what will happen to you? So I close it here.
General Bhadauria, before I take questions, your any final comment as far as neighborhood is concerned? So, do you feel we need to have more patience with our neighbors? Because if we see our neighbors, we have all fragile political systems. And if we see, as Jal Singh also pointed out, Maldives is a classical case. When President Moizu, when he came, we did not have that kind of a relationship what we have now. So there's a total change of relationship what has happened. So it is, I think, basically we need to have more patience and continue with the dialogue. So do you also feel that we need to do that with our neighborhood?
I absolutely agree with you on this big brother attitude. What I wish to say is, in our part of the world, in with our culture, big brother is always seen as someone who comes to your help, someone who helps you, and you look up to him, right? So if you see in South Asia, India cannot reduce its size; it will remain the way it is, right? And people would look up to you because of your size. Call it big brother or whatever. And attitude, India has been showing the actual attitude of a big brother. Whenever Sri Lanka was in dire need of finances, we provided them almost $4 billion worth of money in kind and in line of credits. China did not do so. And Maldives, you just mentioned, they have come around within 2 years. So, big brother, being a big brother is not a bad thing, right? Because big brothers do come to the help of younger brothers or smaller brothers whenever required. And younger brothers would have the tendency to, play one against the other, that we all understand. So those are irritants. They would continue.
Now we'll take few questions, and Mr. Thadani, he wants to ask, Bharat's foreign policy appears to be on track. There appears to be loss of narrative traction of the opponents who are being caught out at every step. Your views? Jal Singh, you would like to take?
Okay, so I largely agree with that. That our foreign policy remains on track, and the entire debate of this evening was focused only on one thing. Being on track means, is it a constant? There, the answer is no. It's a dynamic process, as we mentioned right in the beginning, and therefore, when changes take place around the world, when changes take place globally, every country, including India, has to make certain adjustments in its foreign policy to accommodate those changes. And as far as our overall goals and objectives are concerned, they are firmly in focus, and our march towards that is also very encouraging. So I don't see any cause of concern or worry on that.
Amitesh Behra, he is asking, if we are dependent on USA for strategic technology, then what strategic autonomy we are talking about? Anybody, Jal Bhadauria or Jal Singh, you want to?
See, what I wish to tell Amitesh is that today is an interconnected world, interdependent world. Look at China and US. They trade almost 600, $700 billion, right? They're interdependent for many things. Yet they are having the kind of relationship that we are seeing. So that does not mean if you are buying certain things from somebody or something, then you cannot have strategic autonomy. And India displayed this uh, uh, very well during the Ukraine-Russia crisis or Ukraine-Russia war. United States put a lot of pressure on India not to buy the oil. Their argument was that, look, if you're buying oil from Russia, Russia will make money, and that money would be plowed into waging this war against Ukraine. And US and Europe was fighting on the side of Ukraine. So essentially, you are actually fighting those guys. That was their argument. And what did we say? That look, This is in our national interest. We are energy dependent country. Also, the second argument was equally powerful. We said if we don't buy oil from Russia, the prices of oil will go up because suddenly one supplier would be totally shut out, and there will be little supply demand would be imbalanced, and therefore the prices will go up. So we are, by buying our oil from Russia, we are actually keeping the oil prices stable, which is in the national interest of everyone, whether it is Japan, it is China, or many countries who are buying oil. So, therefore, this strategic autonomy and having some kind of a partnership for in trade or any other field is actually not true.
Jan Bhadauria and Jal Singh, there's a question by Alia. She's asking, India's strategic autonomy, while allowing us to balance partnerships, have left us a bit alone. Since we don't have a stand in geopolitics, no one takes a stand for us. Your comments.
Okay. So, Alia, firstly, big powers or rising power are never scared of standing alone. It is lonely on top, always. But if you are aspiring to be an influential voice in the world, if you are aspiring to be a regional or a global power in times to come, you have to learn to be stand alone. But having said that, it is the stand that you take, it is the position that you take will determine whether the countries are in your support or they are not in support. But that should not deter you as a power or as a responsible power, I would say, to take your own decisions in the national interest of your country, number one, and in the larger interest of global community, number two. So whenever you take that position, it is always what should I say? It is a reflection of your confidence in yourself. And therefore, if you are thinking that whether I'll be alone or somebody will be with me or not, then you might as well wait for your turn and not to take those decisions.
I think with this...
I'll
okay,
just take half a minute,
please.
ma'am.
Please,
I think,
please.
Alia, your question appears to be a little political. If it is in the background of Operation Sindoor, then what I wish to say is that we have all got carried away by the rhetoric in our country and in our press that people, because the countries did not name Pakistan, therefore we were alone and nobody came, nobody was standing with us. Right? Just scratch the surface. Look at what what US did. Few weeks after that, they have put that resistance force, they have banned it. They have said it's a terrorist organization, and they have very clearly said that it has got links with LET, which is still in Pakistan. Right? I would urge you to watch an interview in Hudson Institute in US, when the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan and their foreign ministers had visited US very recently, about a few days back, and he was giving this interview there. Right, watch him, see his body language, how uncomfortable was he in all that 25-30 minutes of the interview, because the interviewing was only asking him about the resistance front, because some time back he said he took a lot of credit because it was not named as a terrorist organization, and when Trump did it, he did not know where to hide his face. So therefore, don't go by these rhetorics that India has been nobody has stood by India or whatever.
Yeah, just 1 minute I will take. Yeah. So for Alia, I would just recall one thing, that remember that we are a cultural and civilizational state. And I'll just remind you of one line written by Rabindranath Tagore, who is the author of our national song. He used to say, Ekla chalo re. Walk alone. And who can walk alone? A confident state, a confident person can walk alone. And if you have the confidence of walking alone, you are also destined to be number one or number two or whatever, wherever you have to reach. So that is as far as the India's philosophy is concerned. Thank you.
I think we had a excellent discussion. As far as foreign policy is concerned, we know foreign policy is dynamic because our environment is dynamic. So as there is continuity, we also need to make certain subtle changes with it. We had covered a lot of areas, right from US to Russia to China. And I would like to thank both our speakers for an excellent exposition today. And thank you so much, General Bhadauria and General Singh. And I would also like to thank our viewers for so many questions. I'm sorry I could not take everything because we were short of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.